Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Susan Lynn. I'm a psychic medium. Thank you for joining me today. Today, we're going to ask the spirit guides your questions that you posted, your political questions that you posted on my community page. So I'm going to get right down to business here because we have quite a few of them, and they range a pretty wide gamut of topics. And my goal is to do this in a reasonable amount of time. So let's get started. So if you're just joining me for the first time, thank you so much. I literally have a conversation with my spirit guides as I do these videos. So here we go. Yvonne Bent from Australia has a question about the Australian elections in May. And she says that they have a mini Trump candidate. God bless you. They are spreading like a really bad case of poison ivy. But anyway, she has a mini Trump candidate who won last time again. So sorry. And she's hoping she's going to have better outcome this time. And she wants to know, is the Labor Party any better than the current Liberal Party coalition? The Liberal Country Coalition. And this reminds me of when I was going to vote with my dad when I was pretty young, actually, he was going to vote. I wasn't voting. I was very young. And he was saying he had a choice between a snake and a rat. But anyway, so the Labor Party seems to have more energy here for you in this vote. The Labor Party is a little bit better. Again, Australia is going through similar thing that United States is going through, and honestly, the UK is going through, in that we are not where we want to be or need to be politically, but we are becoming aware of the things we need to do to get there. So we're becoming aware of what we don't want. And that's a big thing. You need to know what you don't want before you can have an idea of what you do want. So I do think that even though this may not be the best choices for you, I see Australia moving forward. I see Australia becoming more liberal, honestly, and more, I see the Australian people becoming more involved in the process, in the voting process, and also just in speaking their truth, so to speak. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but it is happening. Okay, so there are good movements. They're telling me now, this is true for all of those countries I mentioned and some more as well, that we have to understand there may be 3 steps forward and 1 step back. So I think what Spirit's trying to say here is that sometimes we're going to have a backward step that's going to feel terrible. It's going to feel like, no, we can't go back. It's just temporary. You have to look at the bigger picture, and you have to see that perhaps you have made some forward motion, and this little bit of backward motion isn't like going all the way back. Okay. Hopefully that helps you. Yvonne, thank you for your question. Happy tomorrow in Australia from here in the States. Christina, thank you for your question. She says she would like to know if my guides can tell us if Odessa, which is in Ukraine, and the port cities will be able to successfully defend themselves against Russian warships, and not only do that, but win. So I do see Russian warships attacking Odessa. I do see that. Is Mariupol on the coast? They're just talking about Mariupol. Anyway, there will be some damage. There will be attacks from Russian warships. It will be concentrated. The fight is moving to that area, and it will be concentrated, and they're saying it will be sustained. Eventually, yes. The thing is that eventually, I do see Odessa going back to Ukrainian control. But you have to understand, it's just like what they just said, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. It's not over. This Ukraine down in that area, and also in Donbass, it's not over. It's likely to be going on for some time. If you watch my other videos on Ukraine, you'll understand why. We just need to send them love and light. That a lot of us, and you just said that in your next sentence, sending beaming white light and love out to the world. Thank you, Christina. That's all they need. Hopefully I'll talk about holding the light a little bit later. Okay. Thank you so much for your question. Lorraine A says, she's been holding the light every day. Thank you so much. Oh, this is, Lorraine. I'm so sorry, dear. She just says that it's just becoming a bit much. The Ukraine horrible, things that are happening in Ukraine. And that's all she's saying. Thank you, Lorraine. I agree with you. I went down that rabbit hole yesterday, and I want to say to everyone, especially if you're an empath, you cannot watch the news. You cannot watch what's happening in Ukraine. It's like drinking strychnine or cyanide. It's poison, and it doesn't help. So why would we damage ourselves when we're not actually helping anything? The best thing that we can do is to not watch the news. You do not need to be informed of every little thing that happens there, because I'll talk about it right now. So this is what the guide said. So holding the light, what this means to the guides, and this is what they're asking us all to do. Right now, the energy is like a roller coaster in Ukraine. Well, it's almost like a roller coaster everywhere, but especially in Ukraine. It's a roller coaster. Up, highs, they've pushed them back, lows, this terrible thing happened. And repeat. Our human bodies cannot handle that kind of roller coaster energy. It's very hard on us, okay? So for the rest of us, not Ukrainians, but for the rest of us, Spirit is saying, hold the light. What they mean is stabilize yourself, try to remain calm, keep your energy like this as much as possible. I mean, we understand it's not going to be flat all the time, but certainly not super high and super low. Keep your energy as flat as you can, because our energy, stabilizing our energy, allows the Ukrainians to stand on us. If we're calm and supportive and we just keep that energy as close as we can to calm and then think about the Ukrainians, it's sending them calm. It's allowing them to have a base. We're holding them up. We're keeping everything calm. Okay? So that's what they mean when they say hold the light. We need to hold the light through this whole summer. No matter where you are. I mean, you could be listening to this from Ireland. It doesn't matter. This is the energy worldwide. It's very sporadic. It's very much like a roller coaster. And that's not going to help us get through it. What's going to help us get through it is to cope. Okay, so take your bath, take your walk, ground yourself, use your crystals, listen to happy music, go outside, be in nature, surround yourself with pets or children, whatever it is that calms you down, without excess, right? So whatever that calms you down is coping, and that's what we need to be doing. Okay, so Lorraine, take really good care of yourselves, and everyone else, me included. It was rough. It's been rough. Okay, Ellen says, she says, how do these traitors of our democracy and our government get away with it? She's talking about the United States here. Will the divine hold them accountable here on this earth for us to witness? I wish. Thank you, Susan. Okay, great. Thank you, Ellen. So I understand I understand where you're coming from. It's all about, again, the Spirit is saying we have choices. We live in a world of duality, meaning we have love and hate and fear and happiness and all these different opposite emotions. And it is coming. The good news is it is coming. There is more light than there is dark. Again, I'll just tell you the same thing they said a few videos ago. If you go outside and walk in the morning when the sun is low on the horizon, your shadow is long. When the sun is straight overhead, your shadow is as small as possible. So there's always going to be a shadow. Light casts a shadow. We're not going to live in a place with no shadows. Okay? So it's duality. But if you bring the sun straight over your head into your crown chakra, which is the light, the shadow will be the least that it can be. Okay? That's where we're going in this world. We're making choices. We're seeing what we don't want. We're going to vote. We're going to get organized. We're going to get in the streets if we need to. And we're going to stand up for those people that are being targeted. The minorities are the first people to get targeted. You're seeing that in Florida. You're seeing that with we can't teach racism or anything about race in schools. We're seeing that. So what needs to happen is the rest of us need to stand with those people, the trans that are people that are getting targeted, because they are the canary in the coal mine. Canary in the coal mine is what they put in the coal mine to see if it's safe for humans. Okay? So we just need to stand with them and keep holding the light. Thank you for your question. Sweetie Darling Lulu says, how is Chief Justice Roberts feeling about the dilemma the Supreme Court is facing? Does he take any responsibility for it? He does. He does take responsibility in the sense that he doesn't want his legacy to be marred. He is a right wing. He is not a centrist. When I go into this energy, he is very proud of. I don't know if you caught that eye roll, but he's very proud of Coney Barrett and all of those right wing judges. He's very proud of that. I don't know what they're talking about. Federalist? Is that the Federalist Society? I don't know. Anyway, he's very proud of them, but he doesn't want them. He honestly just wants them to be just right of center. He doesn't want the Supreme Court to be so far right that it's off balanced, and that's why they're showing me that he actually mentors or talks with Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh to tell them, look, this is too far. We need to be sort of just right of center. But if you're asking me if he thinks this is a moral dilemma, he doesn't. He's quite a bit, actually, when I go into the energy, he's quite a bit worried about Kavanaugh. How interesting is that? He's quite a bit worried about Kavanaugh. There's something there. He knows. Okay, so he doesn't know. He doesn't have proof, but he knows. He fears. He fears that something is going to come out about Kavanaugh. And I'm going to tell you, Roberts isn't going to go to the mat for these people. Roberts is not going to get his little fingers dirty. He's going to step back and say, oh, you're being investigated. Oh, you should recuse yourself from all of these cases, right? So, but he can't make them. See, that's the other thing. He cannot make them do this. The Supreme Court is very unusual. They have their own rules. So I hope that answers your question. Interesting about Kavanaugh, huh? Okay. I'm sorry. They're just talking to me about Ketanji. I mean, he'll be very, he thinks of himself as as a father, which I just want to, I want to get sick. Anyway, he's going to be paternal towards Ketanji. What a joke. Okay. So he thinks he's the father of the Supreme Court. Okay. I got to stop there before I spend this whole time just railing about Justice Roberts. Okay. Thank you for your question. Catherine, I cannot pronounce your last name, dear. I'm so sorry, but there's a whole lot of consonants in there. Okay. So she says, and thank you. She's new to my channel. God bless you. Sometimes I feel like, thank you. Welcome aboard. Here's your crash helmet. But I don't think you guys understand my sense of humor. Okay. Let's see. She says that, great. She's a Reiki master. She's been sending healing energy to Ukraine, which is fantastic. She wants to know, is President Biden going to be reelected, and is he going to go for reelection? Okay, so let me tell you about that. This answers a couple of questions, I think, that are in here somewhere. When I saw, and I've said this before, when I saw for the first time Kamala Harris, which I didn't follow her because she's from California and she wasn't in politics per se. When I saw her on TV for the first time and they said she was the VP pick, my guides said to me, president. They just said president. They're not backing down on this. I feel like potentially she will be president. I think there's a potential scenario where she will finish out Biden's term. Now, I don't see Biden crossing over. I just see that there's a health issue that he, because honestly, the Democrats have respect for the office. And if they don't feel like, they have a preponderance of respect. And if they don't feel like they're 100% able to do the job, they'll step aside. So that's kind of what I feel like might happen. Now, this is a potential, but I think that Biden would be reelected if he runs. Absolutely. But I think there is a potential there for him at some point to step down and for Kamala Harris to be our first female and first Black female president. Now, I should say this. This information, these opinions are from my spirit guides. They're not mine. I channel this information. If you have any questions, you can call 1-800-SPIRIT-GUIDES and ask for the complaint department. That's what I have to say about that. And of course, this is for entertainment purposes only. Okay. Thank you for your question, Catherine. Barb Young says, she's asking about the Grassley and his November election. And she's saying he took such pride in stating he's no on KB Jackson. She says it's just time for him to go. And I agree. I think Grassley is very fragile. He's fragile. Hello. What is that word they're trying? It means fragile, but it means he's whatever. They use fragile. He's I can't think of a word. They're sticking with fragile, so I'm going to go with fragile. So he could be out, okay? And they're showing me how we, in the past video, we were focused all of our light, like they show me, like, do you guys remember those sci-fi movies where the eyeballs would light up in white light and just be like penetrating? They're showing me us doing that on Grassley. And my guides it's not Friday night, but I think they've been into the sauce. They're talking about burning his nuts off with our light. So I think what they're saying is, in a sort of way, is that Grassley he's going to go. I think he's going to go. And I think that with a little bit of extra help, he could for sure go. Okay. So let's all figure out who will be running against Grassley. Oh, right. Right. They were talking about, now, has he been primaried yet? Or is he being primaried? Because they're talking about the Republicans not being happy with him. So there could be a switch up, a change up in that election for sure. It doesn't look good for Grassley, but let's make sure it's a Democrat. Okay. So thank you for your question. So Shandar, thank you for your question. Says that, will the abusive laws against gays and trans people being pushed through in red states be overturned before the midterms? I do not see that happening. Again, trans, especially, more than trans people and minorities, people of color, Jewish people. Gays can pass as straight if they want to. Some can, most can. But some people can't. Some people just stand out and they become targets. Okay. So like if you're going to a Jewish synagogue, you're a target, right? So, I think we just need to stand up for those people. We all need to come together as one and all support each other regardless. Okay. I see this going to the Supreme Court. I see all of these crazy state laws that are happening right now going to the Supreme Court. Of course, the Republicans own the Supreme Court right now. So they feel like it's right. That's what they're saying. This is why all these states are doing this, because they're going to be challenged. The laws they don't make any sense. They don't follow public opinion. You can serve and be gay in the military, but you can't say gay in Florida. It just doesn't make any sense, right? But these Republicans are doubling down on hate and fear-mongering and division, and they're going to take it to the Supreme Court. And that's why we really need to get busy in the midterms. We've got to fight for these midterms like no tomorrow. We got to get busy, folks, okay? Now, when it goes to the Supreme Court, they just show me abortion. I don't know. When it goes to the Supreme Court, There's a potential. There's a real potential there that some of these laws could be upheld in the Supreme Court. 1-800 Spirit Guides. It's not me. It's not my opinion. I'm just reading the energy. If everything stays where it is right now, this is the potentiality. Okay, there's something like a 40-50% chance that the Supreme Court, 40, not much, but it's there. Any percentage, in my opinion, is ridiculous. This shouldn't even be going to the Supreme Court. So we have a lot of work to do, but it's it's doable. Okay, Biden is doing really well. The Dems, I think, are on track to pick up seats. If Biden would appoint another Supreme Court justice over and above what we have, we would be a lot better shape. We'll just see. Things will continue to get worse so that we can see what we do want and what we don't want. Okay? It's just that simple. For the guides, it's not emotional. It's what will the humans pick? What will the humans do? If we're willing to put up with this amount of hate or division or whatever, then they'll give us more to see at what point will we choose love. Okay? I hope that makes sense, and I hope that's not too heavy. But this is the thing. We have our marching orders. We can do this. We can get busy. There is more light than there is dark. But we are the ones we've been waiting for, which is what they keep saying. Okay. Vintage Mara, thank you for your question. Her question is, she feels that once the situation in Ukraine settles down, the world will start to raise their voices to bring attention to other governments that are not respectful of human freedom. Will we finally see the changes that will bring about freedom for all? Yes. This is kind of right off of what they were just talking about. They probably read that question ahead of me. I do think that Ukraine is changing the world. I think that, yeah, right. So here's another example they're telling me about that goes back to the Florida thing. Disney is the biggest employer in Florida and quite powerful, as you would imagine, right? Brings in a lot of money. And Disney was not going to stand against the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. They were not going to stand against it until their employees raised a ruckus. And when that happened, Disney went to DeSantis and said, we're not supporting this. We're coming out against this. And now, of course, DeSantis and Disney are at loggerheads. And DeSantis is actually threatening Disney. But what happened? The people stood up and said, we're not going to do this. Yes, the people everywhere, all across the world, Brazil, Australia, there's hotspots of people, Germany, some of Europe. I don't know why they keep showing me Britain, but I don't see people in the streets in Britain. Oh, it's going to take a bigger level of something, I don't know, anger, outrage, something for the British to get in the streets. I don't think they're really protesting type, but I do see them this summer protesting something. So you're gonna see a lot of this throughout the summer. You're gonna see a lot of this for the next couple of years because we are the people, and some of these countries are not going to change overnight. I mean, look at the United States. It's not changing overnight, but we can bring these changes about in an incremental way. We just, again, the guides are saying 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's still forward momentum. Okay. Thank you for your question. Melinda says, how will the killing of all those civilians in Ukraine affect how NATO deals with the invasion going forward? I think we're already seeing this. NATO, the guides have already talked about NATO growing in power in countries. More countries will join NATO. I think that I feel like NATO is going to be involved in some way. I think that there might be. I'm looking at the energy, and I feel like somebody asked this question, I think, about how the war is going to end up. And I think what I'll just say for this question is NATO is going to be involved eventually, and it's going to be part of a peacekeeping thing. I'm going to leave it at that for right now. But there's a really good chance that NATO... No. Okay. No, it's not NATO. There's a real fight going on, apparently, between Poland and NATO. Poland wants to get involved and do something. And NATO is like, no, we can't. And Poland is a NATO country. So that's kind of an inflection point. But I'm going to say that, yes, NATO is going to get involved at some point. You will see NATO in Ukraine. Do they have blue? Do they wear blue on their helmets or something? Who am I seeing? Some kind of blue. It's not, I know Ukraine wears blue armbands. It's not that. It seems to be some sort of blue on their helmet. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Melinda. Wisdom Heart Writes, thank you for your question, says, she's asking about what is going on with the extreme rise in anti-Semitic and anti-Zionism, which is hatred of Jews, attacks in the world. And she says that her local community now has guards posted at every Jewish place of worship and community center. I'm so sorry that you're having to experience this. I'm sorry that our humanity is having to experience this, but this is what we're seeing throughout the world, is a rise in authoritarian and racism and just every kind of ism that's terrible. It goes back to all the other questions. We're going to be addressing this, but it has to get to a flashpoint. The guides are saying how much, it's up to us. It's up to us. It's up to us humans. How much will we put up with? When will we get in the street and say, we want peace? We want, peace rallies. When will that happen? When will we all stand in the streets together? Trans, gays, people of color, Jewish, and also white people all stand in the streets together and link arms and say, you're not going to separate us. You're not going to turn us against each other, because we know that when you separate us and pit us against each other, that bad things happen to all of us. So this is where we're going. It's just going to take us a while to get there, but I do see a lot of protesting and a lot of legislating, Congress getting involved, a lot of these kinds of things. I'll say this briefly, that one of the things that has to happen is the media, for instance, Fox News, is just, brainwashing people. And I do see that we're going to have to address the media. Biden came out and said that Fox News is like, an enemy of the state, basically. Biden literally said that. And so we're going to address that because this is what's happening in Russia, is that Russia is very rural, and they only get state TV or state PR. And they've literally been brainwashed. And these Russians literally think that Ukrainians are some sort of subspecies. They literally think that Ukrainians are less than. So they've been why do they keep using that word, inculcated? They've been brainwashed, okay? And this is what's happening in America. You can hear Putin using the same things that the Republicans say. They use the same talking points. It's fake news. They project everything. Putin, it's exactly the same playbook, okay? We've got to kick Putin out of our media. We've got to be better about policing our media. It's very touchy because we have the First Amendment, but we have to do something, okay? So, I don't know. Does that answer your question? I hope it does. So, okay, let's move on. We will. This is all not easy stuff, but we will do this. This is the next part, the next few years. This is what's going to be happening. And then here's a question from Cindy B about Kavanaugh. When we just heard Judge Roberts talking about Kavanaugh, will Kavanaugh ever be removed from the Supreme Court? And if so, sooner rather than later? And will the Supreme Court ever regain the dignity and trust that it has lost? So when I go into Kavanaugh's energy, I don't think he's going to be removed, which is frustrating, but I do think that he's going to leave. And I get, again, this term called drummed out. He's going to be drummed out, which means basically forced out. So I do think he's going to leave the court. As far as timing goes, timing is very, very hard because in our world, timing is so slow. And in Spirit's world, timing is much fast. It's like they had to put us on slow mode because we make really dumb decisions a lot. So by having a lot of time to think about our actions, they hope we'll catch it and not do that. So that's why we're sort of like, we're so slow down here. But anyway, okay, so they're talking about Jan 6, which is the committee to look at the United States insurrection on Jan 6. They're talking about how that committee may be looking for like this group of people, but because this group of people has connections to this group and this group and this group and this group, those other people will be tarnished, is the word they used. They will be drug into some sort of investigation, even if it's not. I don't think Kavanaugh is directly related to Jan 6. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's somebody in Jan 6 that's connected to something that's not kosher, that's connected to something else that's not kosher, that's connected to something else that's connected to Kavanaugh. And I think it may have to do with gambling debts, and I am going to leave that there. Self-recused, they talk about him self-recusing. So what they're saying, I think, is that he might have to step down of his own volition with some pressure. This is for entertainment purposes only. And then she also asked, will the Supreme Court ever regain the dignity and trust it has lost? And yes, I think it will, but I think it's going to be a few years, because I think that in 3, 4, 5, for sure 5 years, but potentially in 3 years, we will have a pretty different makeup of the Supreme Court. And I see more women on the Supreme Court and more diversity on the Supreme Court. So that's going to, and the Supreme Court will do a better job of policing itself. Like I said, the Supreme Court has its own rules that don't, they don't have to follow the rest of the court's rules. They're supposed to be independent and supposed to self-police, but I think they'll do a better job of doing that. Thank you for your question. Jennifer Booth says, will the U.S. move to a 3-day work week on a permanent basis? A 3-day work week on a permanent basis, and will we have universal basic income? So the energy seems to be focused more around the universal basic income. I think that we will get to a universal basic income. Sounds absolutely like when donkeys fly, but that's what they're telling me. I don't see us going to a 3-day work week at all. I don't see that. I just don't see it. But I think there's more energy around a universal basic income. So that's interesting, right? I don't know how, but California may have something to do with that. But there's a lot of energy around that. It's a great question. Thank you, Jennifer. Grateful Anne Murray, thank you for your question, says, do we have any spiritual masters on earth right now, such as Jesus, Buddha, Kuan Yin, Muhammad, etc.? And that's a fascinating question, right? Because I do see these energies working here on the planet. What I think is very fascinating about your question is that when I go into that energy, I don't see them. This is a very complicated question that I don't have the time to answer the whole thing here. I do know that Biden is divinely guided, okay? But weirdly enough, this is going to be really weird. Again, 1-800 Spirit Guides Complaint Department. Putin is divinely guided. Putin, we all say Trump was put here to basically drain the swamp. I mean, he said it himself, and it's true, because we didn't realize the swamp was full of so many ugly creatures. And now we have to get in there and drain it and disinfect it and clean it out and put some sunflowers in there, right? So these people are here to provoke us into choosing love over hate. These people are here to provoke us in choosing love over hate. that I'm thinking skinheads. I'm thinking all these people that we really don't like. They're provoking us, okay, to take action. So yes, I do think, now your question specifically, I think, might be, are they here like in a human form? And I will answer that briefly. And that is that what I see Jesus entering someone. This is going to freak all you religious people out, but this is spirit guides. His essence enters someone. And that person is guided to act in a certain way. Now, when I see this in a place like Aleppo, or a place like Kharkiv, or a place that has been bombed and has just been annihilated, and where hope is really disappearing. Okay, so some of us Americans think we got it bad. We think, oh, this is terrible. We have no hope. Well, the picture they're showing me is the true description and definition of no hope. Okay. And that's where these spiritual masters are working, is really where human hope is gone, where the light is almost out in the human souls. And that is beautiful, if you ask me. So I'm going to move on. Catherine, and thank you for your question. That was fascinating. Catherine says, thank you. She just found me too. So welcome aboard. And here's your crash helmet. So she says about, I just read, Catherine, you got in here twice. So you got 2 crash helmets. You might need them apparently. Okay. Malka Z says, she would like to know about the guides see improvement in women's rights, such as access to good health care, freedom to have control over what happens to our bodies. I do see this happening again. This is all wrapped up in that same energy of the trans, gays, anti-Semitism, racism. It's all together, you guys. Okay, so here's the big lesson, the big message. We can't have one. We can pick one thing that is our issue. Okay, I'm for this issue. Except for that's divided we fall. So when we all stand together, so when the people that are for pro-choice can stand with the people, with the Jewish people, who can stand with the Black people, who can stand with, the Asian people, who can stand with the trans and gays. And when all of us stand together as one, that's when we're going to be successful in removing hate from our community and from our world. So this seems to be a strong and a strident message that they want to get across, that we all have to band together. It's the only way forward. So yes, when we do this, I do see these things happening. I do see us all coming together. I don't know what else it's going to take for that to happen. We do have some more lessons to learn, but through those lessons, through that pain of those lessons, we will finally realize that we are the ones we've been waiting for, and that we're all going to stand together, and we're going to stand as one. And that's really when all the change is happening, and they happen very, very quickly. Thank you for your question. A.W. Peterson says, when does this horrible war end? And this person is asking about the Ukrainian war. And I will say that if you go back and watch all the other videos I did on Ukraine, we are on track. I want to say the timing is a little bit off, I think, from what I saw. But you see Zelensky out touring different cities. The energy is much different in Ukraine right now. I see by the end of, what month is this? By the end of April, I see the majority of Ukraine, meaning from the coastal area and the eastern area, that area is going to be at war. But from that area up towards Poland, where they do their harvest, and where Kyiv is, I see it being maybe that's where NATO gets involved, and that's a no-fly zone. But it seems like there's some sort of peace treaty or some sort of agreement for that part of the country. The part down below, I said in earlier videos that one of Putin's plans would be to annex that part of Ukraine and keep it for himself. Now, some of those parts he's already basically annexed, and unfortunately, the Western world will allow him to keep those. I think just as a capitulation to end the war. And perhaps Zelensky will get on board with that. I do know there's one city they don't want to give up, but I can't know what that. I don't know if that's Odessa or Mariupol. I don't know, but there are some areas that have already been controlled by Russian insurgents, and that area is going to stay a hot war. But the rest of the country is going to be a cold war. That's what they're telling me. So this is there's some big changes coming. Perhaps not all the changes that we want, but I think that we'll be happy for the majority of Ukraine to be at peace. So hopefully that answers your question. So I think but in the next 3 weeks, you're going to see some big changes towards that, because there's more pressure from NATO and Poland against Russia. Now, of course, we could have some surprises in there because everybody has free will. Putin has free will, and the dude is nuts. So we'll see what happens. But this is the overall energy that I'm seeing right now. Ramona Lopez, thank you for your question. She asked, will DJT get the nomination to run again? And the answer is no. I don't see him around. Listen, I see DJT in some sort of confinement by the end of the year. He's not going to go to a regular prison because he's an ex-president. We're not going to put an ex-president in a prison, but he is going to be in some sort of confined place that is not palatial. They're showing me it's it's institutional looking. To be completely honest with you, I've seen this for over a year. It's institutional looking. It's not, I don't see him in handcuffs, but I do see him on some sort of bench, a padded bench, and he's sitting there all slumped over. And I see this around December. So he's not going to run again. He's out of commission. But there's worse people. Believe it or not, there's worse people like DeSantis. There's worse people that could run. So we've really got our work cut out for us. Thank you for your question. Either Miss Lust or MS Lust 22, thank you for your question. What will happen to the people in Ukraine that are not Ukrainian, but are from other countries and are being discriminated against? They're being detained in Poland like criminals. What do your guides say will be their help? When I go into this energy, I don't see them being treated like criminals. I see them being treated like refugees. And so I see them in dormitories, sleeping a lot of people to one room. I see them being given the very bare, basic minimum necessities. But that's not criminals. I don't see them being treated as criminals. I'm not sure what you're referring to. They may not be getting the same care, money, resources that other refugees are getting. And that's terrible. And I'm sorry about that. But I don't see them being treated as criminals. I feel like there's some connection to their home country, their host country, because they're not citizens of Ukraine. Their host country is supposed to help them, and their host country is not helping them. So because they don't have that kind of help, they're being held in Poland until some other country can help them. So to me, it's like a red tape. It's a problem with their host country. That's what I'm seeing. Maybe you've seen something else, and please let us know if that's the case. But that's not what I'm seeing. Thank you for your question. Ginger J says, thank you for your question, Ginger. Will Congress ever have to use the same health care as the rest of us? No. The answer is no. But I do see universal health care for the United States. I've said this for a year at least. These things are going to take time. We've got to get Congress, and again, The last video, I talked about how Biden, if you watch the last video about energy, about the energy changing, Biden's, approval ratings are going up, gas is going down, jobs are up, wages are up, the summer looks good. I don't see COVID being a big problem. I just don't. I think this summer is going to be really good for the United States. And I think that is going to allow us to get more people in Congress and the Senate. I think it's going to allow the situation for the political situation. It's going to allow Biden and the DOJ to really bring these charges forth and have the support of the people. He could not have brought these charges against DJT before, because the people would have gone nuts. These groups that we're talking about here in the United States would have really had a problem with that, and we would have had a lot of civil discord. So now the summer is the perfect time. So we get these people in Congress, we start changing things, we start addressing the Supreme Court, we start addressing all of our hate problems in the United States, and then we're on the way to universal health care. So that's how we get there, people. We're on the road, we're on the right road. The energy we're moving in the right direction. We just need to hold the light and continue to work really hard to elect people that are sane and have morals, and not those crazy morals like they have in Tennessee and Florida. All right, Ziggy Lawrence, thank you for your question. Will this horrible war spread to the rest of Europe? It is so heavy to be a witness to it, I know. And love and light to Ukraine. I agree. It's horrible, Ziggy. Again, we have to be very careful about ingesting this terrible energy. Your question is, will this war spread to the rest of Europe? So this isn't written yet. The energy is not written. It's not 100%. But yes, okay. So the guides had said before in some of my videos about Ukraine that there could be some incursions, right? There could be some, oops, I crossed your border and accidentally bombed you. That's how Russia talks about these things, right? So I don't see I don't see this as World War III. Okay, I don't see this as World War III. I do see NATO potentially getting involved, but I don't see it spreading to Europe. Okay, does that make sense? Contained. They're talking about keeping it contained. They want to keep it contained to Ukraine, but that might mean that NATO needs to go into Ukraine. I hope that makes sense, but I don't see, I really don't see this affecting Europe in that way. So, breathe easy. Okay. Thank you for your question. Melissa Carpenter says she'd like to know, if the U.S. will always have a Democratic and Republican Party, as well as an independent party, or will we increase our parties? I do see potential for increased parties in the United States. The guides have always said that that Liz Cheney will start her own party. If she cannot get control of the Republican Party, if she can't wrest control away from them, she will start her own party. But I do see other parties developing here in the United States. And I think it might be a good idea. I think having 4 parties or 3 or 5 parties would allow different single issue voters to come together with other people and create coalitions. Not saying it's for sure going to happen, but it seems like the energy suggests that it might. Thank you for your question. Sheila Krabs says, will Tony Evers remain governor in Wisconsin? And I feel like no, the answer is no. I feel like the energy is no on that. Of course, anything could change, but the energy feels like a no. Courtney Ehlers says, thank you for your question. Will Clarence Thomas either resign, retire, or be asked to leave the Supreme Court? Clarence Thomas is going to step down. They just said step down due to health issues. But, Jenny would prop him up. Jenny would prop him up with an IV in his arm on a hospital bed. and have him be voting from that if she could. There's going to be pressure on him to resign. Well, resign is not exactly it, because that has a connotation of something bad. But step down for health reasons sounds respectable. So I think that he's going to be stepping down for health reasons, but he's very stubborn himself. Okay. And we have a precedent of Ruth Bader Ginsburg working to the better end, right? All the way through chemo. So we have a precedent of this, and he may do the same thing, but he is leaving. Thank you for your question. D.D. Abel says, oligarchs, are they suffering yet? Are the oligarchs suffering yet? Yes, they are suffering, because the oligarchs care only about two things, and that is money and power. Freedom. Their freedom. They don't want to be, they're not Russian. They don't consider themselves Russian. They don't live in Russia. They live all over the world and in anywhere they want. And they have the ultimate freedom of being a very wealthy person. So, their freedom is being curtailed, and their money and power is being curtailed. And so, they are suffering, and that's not good for Putin. They're not going to put up with this. They don't want to be Russian. They don't want to live like this. And if supporting Putin means that they have to live like this, then they're not going to support him. And there is some energy around containing him, containing Putin. So we'll see what happens. But yes, they are suffering. Thank you for your question. Barton Tom says, do I see major fighting in Ukraine ending a peace treaty signed with Russia? I do see that. This is what we just talked about. Mickey Walk says, what do the role of the Bric countries, meaning China, India, and Brazil, play in the Ukrainian war? And will the Bric alliance dissolve in the next 2 years? Great question, because we know that Russia wouldn't be in as good a shape as they are right now if it wasn't for China. And India, for that matter. Of those countries, I see Brazil, and I've talked about this before. There seems to be quite a lot of energy around Brazil, changing its, not going so far towards the authoritarian. I think Bolsonaro is going to try to rewrite he's trying to swing back to the center. Now, I don't think this is real. I think this is, as we say in the South, putting lipstick on a pig. I think this is him just trying to, rewrite his PR. Because the Brazilians want something different. I feel like there's going to be a lot of political unrest in Brazil. So, yes, I think these Bric countries are going to start falling apart because Russia... Oh, right. Let's see if I could say this really briefly. Because we all learned, and I mean Australia, Britain, Europe, United States, Canada, we all learned that we can't have things that we need within our country produced in other countries. So, for instance, during COVID, there were certain places that made certain things, and they were hit by COVID, so the rest of us couldn't get that ingredient, or we couldn't get that supply. Same thing with the war. Apparently, Ukraine made certain parts that were used in Russian tanks. I mean, wrap your head around that. So, obviously, that didn't help Russia very much. So, what I see happening is, I see Biden going to NATO and saying, let's make a trade pact among us NATO countries where we support each other, because should we ever need to go to war, we know we're not going to go to war with each other. And we know that I can count on you to get this product, and you can count on me to give you that product. So when that starts happening, China gets cut out of the trade process. And they're showing me that citizens of countries will support a little more taxation to pay a little more for these products that we use to be made in countries that have war treaties. Okay, so these war treaties are going to be not just, you're not going to go to war with me. The war treaty might actually say, you're not ever going to support monetarily a country that goes to war with a NATO country. Okay, so you're going to see some you're going to see some big changes, and this is all for the better. This is all for the better. And I do think, I did this video called Biden's New World Order, I think months and months ago, and people were freaking out thinking that sounds like Nazi, and people didn't like that. But here we are. This is Biden's New World Order. Biden is the one who went to NATO and got everybody together. Biden brought all these NATO and non-NATO countries together, got them all to sit down at the table and got them all to support Ukraine. This is Biden's New World Order. He will go to these countries and he will create new trade deals that will benefit peaceful countries. And that might leave China and specifically India out, because India has shown that they're going to make a deal with anybody. They don't care what your human rights record is. They want the money. So absolutely that's going to happen. Thank you for your question. Britches and Stitches says, what's going on in Tennessee with this new marriage law? So you have the Republicans basically devolving into, I want to say Cro-Magnon, but I think it really puts them down, some kind of barbarian group of people. So what she's talking about, or I'm assuming it's a she, is this bill called HB 233, which is scheduled to be heard in the House of Civil Justice Committee, and it would establish a common law marriage between one man and one woman. And that's their whole point, is that it's one man and one woman against attacks against gay people. But here's the kicker. Besides that, it doesn't have a minimum age requirement. So they didn't think that a minimum age requirement was necessary, but they did think it was necessary to point out that this would only be allowed to happen between a man and a woman. This is what we're talking about. So, it's just like Cawthorn talking about the orgies and the cocaine. It's almost like Spirit is prodding the Republicans to show us their worst selves, how terrible they are, so that the world can open their eyes, so the Americans can take these blinds off and say, my God, what's wrong with these people? They're not normal. And this is going to benefit Liz Cheney, because she's no prize. Trust me. She's going to be a terrible opponent for the Democrats, but she's smart enough to not talk about orgies, cocaine, or to say that you can marry a 12-year-old. Okay. So it's going to open her up to have this control of the Republican Party. Some of these things will go to the Supreme Court. I've already talked about this. I don't think that this Tennessee law is going to get very far, but it does show you what they want, what they think. There are the ones that are always talking about child sex trafficking, and they're the ones that do it for entertainment purposes only. Okay, thank you for your question. Jennifer Booth says, do I see a woman president in the United States? And yes, we talked about that already. I do see a very high, strong probability of Kamala Harris being our first woman president and our first Black woman president, which, frankly, if we don't do a lot of work on these nut jobs, it's going to cause the Republicans to, if they jump out of windows, that would not be a bad thing, but it's going to cause a lot of unrest, okay? So we really need to do some work here in the United States. I don't know. Maybe that's part of our work. She gets in the office and it causes unrest, and then we finally deal with what started when Barack Obama became president. All these cretins came out of the woodworks and went nuts, right? So I guess maybe her becoming president will allow us to finally, once and for all, face the hate that's in this country and deal with it and move past it, right? So maybe that's where we're headed. So, and that's good. Look, if you've got a boil that's infected, putting a Band-Aid on it is not going to fix it. So we need to get the boil out. We need to take it out, and we need to address it, cleanse it, drain the swamp. That's what we need to do. So the sooner the better for me. Let's get this show on the road. I said that, and the guys were like, "Oh, really? You can't even deal with Ukraine." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I'm going to be crying. I'm going to be like, no, I don't want to do it. I said I didn't mean it." Okay, sorry, guys. Thank you for your question. Sweetie Darling Lulu says, last minute news, Elon Musk has bought a share of Twitter. Again, look, Twitter, he wants to control public opinion. He understands that the media is for sale, and he understands that the person who controls the media controls everything, right? The head of CBS apparently said Trump is terrible for the country, but he's great for CBS. So this is what Elon Musk thinks. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk. I think he's an elitist, and I think he's a classist, and I think he's a racist. Boy, I said that, didn't I? For entertainment purposes only. He will affect Twitter, but it won't be wholesale. It won't be big. It won't be an overarching effect at this time. I don't feel good about it either. Josephine says the same thing. The next question is she doesn't feel good about Elon Musk buying Twitter. Look, I just hope he builds more spaceships and goes and messes up some other planet. Okay, so Jennifer Booth says, how will Ketanji Brown Jackson help restore women's rights and minorities? I love Ketanji Brown Jackson. I think she's phenomenal. I think she's going to be an asset to the court, but I don't think that she's going to be an activist judge. You know, they're always accusing us of being activist judges. I don't think that she's going to legislate the far left, okay? I think that Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to be pretty center. So I think she will vote for the right things and in the right ways, but I don't see her going so far to the left. Okay. Does that make sense? But yes, of course, she's a Democrat. She's going to vote for Democratic values. She's going to be a ray of light. Okay. Sherry Cat, thank you for your question. She says, when will we be rid of Putin and Trump? Well, I see us being rid of Trump by December of this year of 2022. And then Putin, there's activity right now, and I can't tell you exactly the timing because there's activity on him right now. He is a moving target is what I just heard. So I don't think he's going to be around next year. His energy is pretty strong. I think there's a 60% chance that he will not be around next year, but there's a 40% chance he will. But he's going to be isolated. He's going to be very isolated, very much like North Korea's leader. He's going to be very isolated. And we're going to deal with the media. We're going to deal with his ability to come into our media and do psyops, psychological operations. We have to deal with that. We've got to cut that off. And when we do, he will be even further alienated. So Courtney asked, who will be our first female president? That's, I do believe it's going to be, Kamala Harris. And that is our last question. So I ran through this as fast as I could. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions or need clarity in anything that the guide said, please put it down in the comments. I'm very active about answering questions, so I'm happy to get those. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share if you find this content interesting or helpful. We are going to be going through some things, some ups and downs. Again, the roller coaster energy, but let's try as much as we can to stay calm and steady, because I really think these other people that are struggling right now, and they keep talking about Aleppo, which is in Syria, has also been, Russia has been horrible for them. I do think that Putin and Russia is going to be brought before the Hague for crimes against, or war crimes. And I do think that there will be even more sanctions and more alienation for them. And I do think the world is coming together. So listen, we've got some more lessons to learn, but if we all stick together and come together as one, we'll learn those lessons a lot faster. So listen, I hope this was helpful. Take really good care of yourselves. Much love and light to you. We'll see you again right here on this channel next time.